Going into week number 5 of the Clampdown, John O'Brien, Jamestown Community College, State University of New York, with history 1510. We're looking at chapter 17 this week. If you're following our original schedule, this would be the week of April the 27th, a week that holds 2 chapters. So if you're a little bit ahead of the game, as I am, actually it's April 12th right now, where I'm lecturing, when I'm lecturing. So that's good. Be a little bit ahead so things don't pile up at the end. We will have our 4th and final exam. It's just a unit exam, but it is on chapters 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Right? So there'll be a number of essays there. I'll give you the questions a week ahead of time. Just like our previous exam, you'll have a week to do the essays through Blackboard. And that exam will be due on May the 11th. So I'm going to push the date back by a few days. Originally it was going to be on May 8th. If you have a makeup to complete, please email me. All right? We'll need to figure out how to do that. Okay? It'll be through Blackboard. It'll be the same questions the class had originally, but it's not going to be possible to do multiple choice through Blackboard in a consistent way and be fair to the students who did those in class. So it'll be the same essays that you see on the review sheets, but it will not be multiple choice or identifications. All right, so hopefully you're keeping up on the news. Looks like those of you who are in Chautauqua County still are doing a good job flattening this wave. Sadly, though, 22 cases and I think 3 mortalities in Chautauqua County. So more work to do, and we'll get through this thing together, and we'll get through it faster if we really clamp down. Okay, avoid contact with other people. The CDC is now recommending that you wear a mask out in public, even if you have to make one yourself, because there's a shortage of them. You can Google how to do that. That doesn't mean you're invulnerable, however. That just protects everyone else from you. You still need to keep your social distance. You still need to wipe hard surfaces down and things like that. So it's not Superman protection, but it does give actually other people protection from you in case you sneeze or cough. Okay. All right. So looks like in the news today, at least on my day, I don't know when you're going to be watching this, but some of the clampdowns, as I call them, lockdowns in Europe, are shifting. That is controversial. The fear is that if we let go too quickly, the coronavirus will come back and infect people who develop COVID-19. So I think we really need to trust the medical, scientific, and even the mathematics professionals. This is a good lesson, tough lesson, but a good one in statistics. Okay, so keep up with the current events. We're fortunately, in some ways, maybe heading back several centuries into the 13th century for chapter number 17. Nomadic empires in Eurasian, right, from Asia to Europe, this really one continent. I know geographers like to divide that. There is no easy dividing line between Europe and Asia. It's one big landmass. So the Eurasian continent will be integrated through the migration of nomadic people on the move, right, from Asia to Europe, at least Eastern Europe. So let's pull this up here and see what's going on. We're going to do this, and then at the end of lecture today, whenever you're watching this, we'll do about 8 minutes of video from the previous lecture that did not have time to add on, and that was the 2 worlds of Christendom. So we'll see about an 8-minute video on the year 1000, when Christians throughout Europe thought it was going to be the end of the world, and that didn't happen. So they thought it was going to be, 1033, because they believed Jesus died when he was 33 and come back 1,000 years later. Well, that didn't happen either. But interesting times, right, 1,000 years ago. So you think we've got it tough. We do, right? But people have had it tougher through history. And the people who've been smart and lucky and worked hard have survived, right? We're here as proof of that. So nomadic empires and Eurasian integration. What's this chapter all about? Nomadic people are on the move. These are people who are, well, that defines itself, right? Nomads are on the move. Horseback riding people from the steppes of Asia, and that is spelled S-T-E-P-P-E-S. We're not talking about staircases. We're talking about rolling, grassy hills, very arid or dry land, few trees, but a lot of grass, okay? Very, very difficult to farm, if not impossible. Certainly 700-800 years ago, impossible to farm. This will be the homeland to the Turkish, Mongol, and Turkish people. So metaphorically, we're going to kind of make a sandwich here. Turks, Mongols, and Turks. So we have different layers. We can layer the history here. Expanding from the year 1000 roughly to the year 1400. Okay? They'll create vast empires that will link the Eastern Hemisphere beginning in the 13th century from Eastern Europe through Anatolia, what today is now Turkey, Persia, North India, and China. We'll see an integration of societies, actually a reopening of the Silk Roads. So, Turkish people ethnically originated in the Central Asian steppes. So here we see that S-T-E-P-S. It's really kind of a tribal society living in greatly extended families known as clans. Nomadic, right? So they cannot farm to any great degree, nor can humans eat grass and digest it, but humans can eat the animals that eat the grass, like sheep and goats and cows and horses, right? Or drink the milk or eat the cheese that comes from those animal products. So it's not a vegan society by any means, folks, right, or vegetarian. These people are on the move. They're migratory, and basically pastoral is you go to greener pastures. Okay? When all the grass is eaten in one area, you move on to the next area, right? Greener pastures. And actually the animals have evolved so that different animals can eat the same grassy field, right? And I don't know exactly, someone can always fact check this, I can't do that right now, it would take too much time. But horses might leave this much stubble, then goats this much stubble, then sheep this much stubble, so you can kind of keep foraging these animals on the same grass for a while. You might get tired of cottage cheese and horse meat, so if you're a nomadic person, you might trade with settled peoples to the south, like the Abbasid Empire, the Persians, right? Who have things that you don't have on the steppes. And you have maybe some things that they don't. They have fresh meat, milk, cheese. And when trading doesn't work, raiding might work, okay, going in and stealing. The nobility of these Turkish and Mongol people will govern during wartime, and often as tribal societies that were at war with one another, or at war with, again, settled, so-called civilized peoples. Okay. Originally they were shamanistic. For lack of a better term, I might say, because I'm not an anthropologist, kind of medicine man religion. Okay, the belief in nature spirits, the belief in a sky god, the belief in spiritual beings that can help us beyond Earth, deceased ancestors, for example. Okay? So it's not dogmatic. It's not all written in one book where there's a lot of rules. The religious leader of the tribe helps to explain existence, why we suffer, how we can make it through. Okay? Questions people are asking right now, perhaps. Right? Many of these peoples, I can call them peoples because we have at least 3 groups here, right? Many of these peoples will convert to Islam. They tended to convert to the religion of the people they conquered. Right? So if they're going in to the Abbasid Empire, mostly Persia to the south, in time they convert to Islam. If they go into China, not going to be Confucian. Okay? They're going to convert mostly to Buddhism, okay? Tibetan form of Buddhism. So originally shamanistic, they'll convert to Islam. Again, the conquerors convert to the religion of the conquered. We see that throughout history. And when they're at war, tribes get together in larger tribes called confederations. This is an image of a yurt. Again, any images that don't come through clearly, go ahead and Google them, Y-U-R-T. Just don't buy them right now, okay? There's some fancy yurts. It's kind of the yuppie thing to do, if there's still yuppies around, that buy these kind of circular tents and live in them and think you're going back to nature. These things are pretty fancy today. The original yurts, they're round in design and kind of domed, okay? So the wind can go around and over them without knocking them over on these windy steppe lands. They were often made of wool, right? So made out of animal products with the little bit of wood, frame that you could find. Okay, here's an image. So obviously this is during the era of photography. These are not Turkish people from the 11th century or 12th century, but still nomadic people in Turkestan, whenever this was taken. Look, a teepee will blow over, right? It's in some ways similar perhaps to nomadic people of the Great West in what is now the United States, right? So these yurts are tents. You can roll them up when all the grass is gone and move out. So we see a horse, I see a sheep there, some other animals. Okay. The Seljuk Turks, that'll just be a name of this kind of first wave of Turkish people after 1000, moved southward into the Abbasid Empire. Okay, the Abbasid Empire is most of the Muslim world at this time, based in Baghdad. Okay? They'll come to control that midway through the 11th century. They will, we mentioned this a few weeks ago, literally blind the Abbasid caliphs. The Abbasid emperors would be blinded, visually rendered blind. I think they burned their eyes out, frankly. All right? So the Turks could control the throne without actually sitting on the throne. Okay? But in time, the Turkish invaders will convert to Islam, and then with kind of this great enthusiasm of the newly converted, push Islam more forcefully and aggressively into India, at least northwest India. Okay? So we'll see the spread of Islam. Territory will be taken to the other side. Okay, it will be taken to the Byzantines. The Byzantine Empire will start to lose territory, especially in Anatolia, okay, or what we now call Turkey. On the other side, in the east, the Seljuk Turks will set up a capital in Delhi, okay, called the Sultanate of Delhi. They had come from what is now Afghanistan. They'll come to control much of northern India. Mahmud of Ghazni will fight against the Buddhists. Buddhists had a reputation of not fighting back forcefully, right? They were more about peace and ending suffering than causing suffering through warfare. They were a minority, and literally the Buddhists we pushed out of India. Most of the Buddhists today in India have come back from places like China, okay, Tibet. These Muslims will also attack Hindus, but Hindus are more numerous. They're not going to subjugate every single Hindu person physically. Okay? The Buddhism will be pushed out. Hinduism will kind of hunker down and see these invaders as a separate caste, okay, a separate society living within India. Map here, and again, you can Google this. It comes in your textbook if you're doing Bentley, Ziegler, Salter, like we do in this class. So from the Straits of Gibraltar, okay, here in North Africa, we have the Abbasid Empire, stretching across North Africa into what is Egypt, Cairo, Arabia, Persia, Syria, up to the Caucasus Mountains, okay, and into what is now Afghanistan, Pakistan. Okay. And then we will have the Sultanate of Rum here. I wonder where that came from. The Sultanate of Delhi here in northern India, but also Pakistan, a bit of Afghanistan. And then look, if you can see this, the Byzantine Empire is shrinking over time. Okay? It's truncated or it's shrinking. The successor to Rome is getting smaller and smaller, and in about 2.5 centuries it will cease to exist. This next layer of our nomadic peoples, the Mongols, you probably know more about. At least you've heard of Genghis Khan. Looks like Chinggis Khan here. Okay, so we're transliterating from the Mongolian into the English language. How do you spell it? That doesn't make sense in early Mongolian. It was not a written language. Okay? In fact, it will be the Uyghur people who will first start to write the Mongols' language into characters. Eastern Chinese people in China. Genghis Khan, so here we are in the 12th century, steppe nomads. Genghis Khan united the Mongolian people, who didn't number more than 1 million or so. There is a theory now that just a short phase of climate change dried up a lot of the grass in Mongolia, and if that's how you exist or subsist, your horses don't have the grass to eat, you need to move, and you need to move, and you need to move, and there's a cascading effect. Okay? As the Mongols were great equestrian warriors. There are stories about Mongolian toddlers learning how to ride on the back of sheep, holding the wool and learning how to ride. So they, supposedly could kind of sleep on the backs of horses. I'm not sure about that myself, but change horses in mid-battle, suck the blood of horses out of the neck if they needed some nourishment during battle. And as a steppe nomadic people, these kind of harsh fighters from the grasslands, they saw city dwellers, kind of like me and you, as rather soft, okay? They were really harsh on cities. They would often send emissaries to the city and say, look, the Khan's army will be here tomorrow. You have 24 hours to surrender. If you don't surrender, everyone in the city is going to be killed. Unfortunately, the Mongol people, Mongol men anyway, engaged in rape as a weapon. So they instilled this great psychological fear, and so often cities would surrender with very little fighting, okay, even without a fight. Okay, you saw what happened to Dunkirk, and now you're in Jamestown, New York. This is, and you decide just to give in, okay, to submit to the Khan's rule. The Mongol state defeated the Turks, and then they took Persia from that first wave, right, the first steppe people. So we have the Turks who had overtaken the Abbasids, and now the Mongols overtake the Turks in Persia. Baghdad is laid waste, okay, frankly. Blood runs in the streets of Baghdad, okay, in the 13th century. They'll also defeat the Eurasian people, who are all actually nomadic people in northern China, and the Mongols will take most of China over a couple generations. After Genghis Khan died of a hunting accident, actually fell off his horse, which is somewhat ironic, China will fall under the rule of his grandson, Kublai Khan, and we'll see what's called the Yuan Dynasty, Y-U-A-N, or the Mongol Dynasty, if you want to keep it simple. They'll take almost all of China. They will not take Southeast Asia. I think our book makes the argument, I've never given it much more thought than this, that as a horseback riding people, it was very difficult for the Mongol warriors to go too far into the mangrove jungles of Southeast Asia. I'm sure the Southeast Asian people had something to do with that too. The Mongols will also try to take Japan, and they will be thwarted. Again, the Mongols were not a great seafaring people. They're steppe nomads. They knew how to ride horses, not so sure they knew how to build boats. And I'm grossly oversimplifying things, by the way, I realize that. But their navy is defeated twice in the mid-13th century by kamikaze. No, not suicide dive bombers. That's the World War II kamikaze. This is the divine wind, the real wind, okay? Typhoon winds will swamp the Mongol fleets twice, and they'll give up on the dream of conquering Japan. Of course, the Japanese will believe the gods are on their side, and Japan will never be conquered. Thus, the reason for Shinto Japanese pilots to engage in suicide missions against American ships to prevent the invasion of Japan at near the close of World War II. Another type of wind, and I would not call it a divine wind. The winds of atomic weaponry will cause the unconditional surrender of Japan that made an invasion unnecessary. The United States will occupy Japan after World War II for a number of years, but the seaborne invasion was not necessary due to the American use of atomic weaponry. That's another course. By the way, come back next semester. Hopefully you'll be live and in person, face-to-face, which I'm more comfortable with on campus. That course is History 1520. It kind of picks up where this course leaves off, right around the year 1500. Okay, back to this. The descendants of Genghis Khan who end up in Russia, called the Khanate of the Golden Horde. In time, they actually begin to farm out their tax collection to European Russian people, like the Romanovs became the tax collectors for the Khans in Russia. We have the Ilkhanate of Persia. Yes, as I said, in the mid-13th century, Baghdad destroyed. But the Mamluk people of Egypt, descendants of slaves in Egypt, will stop. Now we have grassland horseback riding people fighting in the desert are stopped in Egypt. Okay? In time, many of these Mongol societies will convert to Islam. Okay? Hitherto, they've been animistic, okay, believing in the sky god, great Tingrit in the sky. But they, again, tend to convert to the religion of the conqueror. So Islam in Egypt, Islam through the Middle East, Persia, Buddhism in China. The Khans had no use for Confucianism. In fact, the Mongols denigrated, they put down Chinese culture and Chinese people.